Hi everyone, welcome to Elvis Presley Past, Present and Future, where we are continuing on with our Elvis journey. Thank you everyone for joining in with our journey. Hope you are enjoying it and hope you have learnt a lot from the episodes that we have featured so far. So let's get into our next journey. Since a child, Elvis loved sport, especially football, which he played whenever he had the time and found players. He attended as a spectator on November 30 at Crump Stadium, which was the Memphis Sports Stadium at 1275 Linden, adjacent to Central High School, and was built in 1934. Crump Stadium hosted major college games, including all the home games of the Memphis State College, and was the site of the big high school games as well. Elvis was late and didn't get to crown Sue Manka as Queen of Halftime Activities at the Memorial Game for the Blind. Clutching an Elvis Presley Love Me Tender wristwatch, Sue Manka was all aflutter when Elvis kissed her. But what a consolation prize. On December 4, 1956, in the early afternoon, Elvis stopped at Sun, where he had made his first record only 3 years prior. Despite his move from Sun to RCA Victor Records, Elvis and Sam Phillips and his studio were on friendly terms. While he was in Memphis, his path led inevitably to Sam Phillips as well as to Dewey Phillips, never forgetting that these two persons enabled him to get started on his career as a singer. On the same day, Carl Perkins, who had by this time already had success with blue suede shoes, had come into the studio, accompanied by his brother Clayton and Jay, and drummer W.S. Holland. Their aim was to cut some new material, including a revamped version of the old blues song, Matchbox. Sam Phillips, who wished to try this sparse rockabilly instrumentation, had brought in his latest acquisition, singer and piano man extraordinaire, Jerry Lee Lewis, to play the piano on the Perkins session. At this time, Jerry Lee Lewis was still unknown outside of Memphis. Elvis was, at the time, the biggest name in show business, having hit the top of the singles charts 5 times and topping the album charts twice in the preceding 12-month period. After chatting with Sam in the control room, Elvis listened to the playback of Perkins' session, which he pronounced to be good. He then went into the studio, and sometime later, the jam session starts. Phillips left the tapes running in order to capture the moment, as a souvenir, and for prosperity. At some point during the session, Johnny Cash, also a Sun artist, popped in. Cash had also enjoyed a few hits on the country charts. During the session, Sam Phillips spotted an opportunity for some publicity and called a local newspaper. The Memphis Press Robert Bob Johnson, the newspaper's entertainment editor, came over to the studio accompanied by photographer George Pierce and UPI representative Leo Soroka. Jack Clement, who was hired by Sam Phillips to be the sound engineer of the studio, remembers. Carl Perkins was in the studio recording, but everything stopped when Elvis came in. Everyone just started swapping stories and picking out songs, and I remember thinking I would be remiss if I didn't record this. So I moved a few mics around and recorded what happened. Nobody paid any attention to the tapes for years and years. It was a long time before the record came out. This was known as the $1 Million Quartet. The next day, an article written by Robert Johnson was published in the Memphis Press. Many of the tapes were lost until the 1970s, and the music wasn't released until the 1980s. After some renovations and alterations were made to Elvis's new home, Graceland, the family finally moved in on the 16th of May, but Elvis didn't spend his first night there until June 26. after he came back from Hollywood. But Elvis's awareness and his rocket-like rise also had its downsides. On Friday, March 22, Elvis found himself surrounded in downtown Memphis by a group of 5 or 6 angry Marines. The background for this incident is Elvis and George Klein were on the road in downtown Memphis. While sitting in his car and signing autographs for a group of girls, one of the Marines said to his friends, "I'm going to see how tough this movie star is. He's been messing with my wife, and I'm going to whip his ass." He walked up to Elvis and told him, "You bumped into my wife as she walked out of a restaurant about 2 months ago. She told me all about it. I want to get straightened out right now." That Marine was 18-year-old Herschel Nixon. Because Elvis was threatened from jealous friends before, he took the threat serious. Elvis reached into his sports jacket, inside pocket, and calmly and smoothly pulled out a gun, then quickly extended his arm so that the blowpipe was just an inch away from a spot right between the big guy's eyes. "Okay, you badass son of a bitch. Let's see what you do now," Elvis growled. Thinking the pistol was real, Nixon backed off. But later, he threatened to have Elvis arrested and contact the police for saying that Elvis pulled a gun to him, what looked like a .25 caliber pistol, using the words, "I'll blow your damn brains out, you punk." Later, he told a newspaper, "I won't file a complaint because he didn't hurt me none. But I think Presley owes me an apology because nobody, not even Presley, has a right to pull a pistol on someone." He claimed that he only wanted to start a conversation with Elvis and that he made up the story about Elvis and his wife, so he'd just have something to talk about. On Monday, March 24, Elvis sent a telegraph to Herschel, which reads as follows. "I read in the paper that you wanted an apology, and I'm willing to give you an apology. In fact, I think we owe each other an apology. The whole thing was kind of uncalled for. I'm sorry it happened, but heaven knows it was all strictly uncalled for. I would like to straighten out another rumour that started out there a few months ago. Somebody started the rumour that I didn't like Marines or sailors, and it was for a great while that every time I went out there, some Marine or sailor that I saw tried to cause trouble with me. And also, somebody started another rumour in Mexico that I didn't like Mexicans, and a lot of Mexicans got mad at me. Then and there in Memphis, the rumour got out that I didn't like coloured people. And God knows I've never said that. I never said I didn't like anybody. It's just that rumours like that get started and there is nothing that I can do about it. The Marines and the Navy and the Army and the Air Force protect our country. And they have been around for a long time protecting us, so who am I to say that I don't like anybody? Because God created everybody equal, and I would never ever say that I didn't like anybody. I'm not saying this because I'm afraid, for heaven knows I am not in the least bit afraid. But I just don't want anybody thinking that I said things like that when I never even thought about it. I got a lucky break in life, and I'm very thankful for it. But there are a few people who want to take shots at me. The majority of people all over the world are very nice, but there are a few people who want to prove something. I have talked my way out of trouble so many times that I couldn't even count them. Not because I was afraid, but just because I've always been the type of person that doesn't believe in fighting and all that kind of stuff, unless I thought it was absolutely necessary. And about the instance the other night, and about the gun is a Hollywood prop gun. And I brought it home because a lot of people have asked how movies are made and about the guns and so on. I had about 6 of those guns with me, and I was just showing them to people when you called me over. Many times there have been people who have come up to me and stick out their hands, and when I went to shake their hand, that hit me. I've had guys come up to me and ask for autographs and hit me and then take off for no reason at all. I have never laid eyes on them before. So when you and your friends called me over the other night and you started that stuff about me bumping into your wife, I didn't know what you were going to do. I'm just like you. If a guy can do something to protect himself, he should do it. Again, I say I'm sorry the whole thing came up. I hope you have best of luck in the future. I would like to add that some of my best friends are Marines, some are sailors, and in the Army and the Air Force and so on. And I think they all great outfits. Because if it wasn't for them, and if it wasn't for God, where would our country be? So long. Elvis no doubt thought that this telegram would end the matter. But Private Nixon's Marine superiors at Millington Naval Air Station in St. Louis, where Nixon was undergoing training, wanted a more formal conclusion. They requested a private meeting between Elvis and the Marine to resolve the situation. On March 26, both men met with City Judge Boucher in his chambers at the Memphis police station. Elvis said that he thought the Marine was trying to start a fight. Moved away. But, said the Marine followed, I told him I didn't know what he was talking about. Because I'd been in Hollywood, then I thought about that toy gun and pulled it out. I said, you don't want to start trouble with me, do you? Elvis continued saying that Nixon should have known that he was only kidding when he pulled out the gun. I was smiling when I took it out of my coat, and everybody else standing there knew it wasn't real. While the meeting took place, reporters waited in an adjoining room. When Elvis, wearing a striped sports coat, and Nixon in his Marine uniform emerged from the judge's chambers, they posed, shaking hands for a photo. That appeared in the Memphis Press that afternoon. It was all a misunderstanding. We're both sorry it happened. I told him that I felt I owed him an apology and that I also felt he owed me one. He thought I had a real gun, and I thought he and his buddies were trying to beat me up. That's all there was to it, announced Elvis. A reporter asked Nixon if Elvis had really threatened to blow his brains out. That's all over now, Nixon said. I know that Elvis isn't afraid of me, and I'm not afraid of Elvis. We're friends now, responded Nixon in the Memphis Press. From March 26, it says, Elvis Presley patched up his quarrel with the Marines today. The special hearing was arranged after Elvis sent the Marine a telegram yesterday apologising for pulling a toy gun from his coat. Elvis, who was about to leave Memphis for a 10-day tour, invited Nixon to see his show that Friday in St. Louis, where the Marine was stationed. Nixon accepted the invitation, saying, I'll sure to be there and I'll bring my wife. Another troublesome incident was resolved. The incident with Nixon was settled without legal action. The incident made national news. It was the second time in just a few months that Elvis had made the news for such confrontations. The episode with the Marine only increased the public perception that Elvis was reckless on the streets, as he was on the stage. It was an image that fueled his young fans and added to the conviction of community leaders that Elvis had a harmful influence on teenagers. For Elvis, though, there were repercussions. Burned again by a disruptive street encounter, he began to recede even further behind a protective wall of retainers and bodyguards, all held to a strict code of loyalty designed to protect his image and keep strangers away from him. Unfortunately, that wall would also eventually isolate Elvis in a make-believe world of his own making. Loving You was a box office success. Composed by Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller, Elvis's single Teddy Bear, backed with Loving You, was certified platinum by the Record Industry Association of America. The film was based on the short story A Call from Mitch Miller, written by Mary Agnes Thompson and published in June 1956 issue of Good Housekeeping. That year, Hal Wallace bought the rights for the story to turn it into a vehicle for Elvis's first starring role for Paramount Pictures. 6 months before the start of the production, Wallace loaned Elvis to 20th Century Fox, where he appeared in his movie debut. The producer then selected Hal Cantor to direct the film and to co-write the script with Herbert Baker. To write a script adjusted to Elvis, Cantor travelled to Memphis, Tennessee to meet him in person. Along with Elvis's entourage, he went to Shreveport to see the last performance of the singer on the country television show Louisiana Hayride. Cantor witnessed the reaction of Elvis fans, as well as Presley's manager, Colonel Tom Parker's handling of the spectacle, both of which he used as an inspiration for the script. The working titles of the movie were Lonesome Cowboy, Running Wild, Stranger in Town, and Something for the Girls. Due to the appeal of Elvis's previous film being titled after a song sung by him, Wallace selected the final name for the film using the Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller ballad penned for the movie, Loving You. Production started on January 21, 1957 and ended on March 8. The film was shot at the Paramount Studios, except the Jessup Farm scenes, which were shot in the Hollywood Hills. The film features appearances by Elvis's guitarist Scotty Moore, bassist Bill Black, and drummer DJ Fontana. The Jordanaires also appeared. Also, Elvis's parents, Gladys and Vernon, who were visiting the set of the film, were also included in the final scene of the film as part of the audience of the telecast. Elvis was top billed. His co-stars were Elizabeth Scott, Wendell Corey, and Delores Hart. Walter Tex Warner. Sorry, this is the plot. Walter Tex Warner, Wendell Corey, a seasoned country and western band leader past his prime, and his manager and love interest, Glenda Michael, work for the campaign of Texas candidate Jim Tallman. During a campaign stop in the town of Delville, Deke Rivers, Elvis Presley, and a workmate deliver an order of beer. While they're unloading, the workmate talks to Glenda about Deke's singing ability, which Glenda jumps on to revive the sagging interest in the event by using local talent. She convinces Deke to sing a song with the backing of Texas Rough Ridin' Ramblers. Seeing the positive reception by the female audience, Glenda tries to convince Deke to join the Tex Warner show. Driving in Deke's hot rod, she tells him about his potential. Not willing to leave his first steady job in a year, he rejects the offer. But Glenda asks him to think about it. Upon returning to town, Glenda calls the Highway Beverage Company, after which she and Tex quit the Tallman campaign to return to their own roadshow. The following morning, as the group's leaving town, Dick accepts Glenda's offer, after being fired by his employer because of a false complaint to the drinks company by Glenda regarding a fictitious late delivery. Glenda just happens to have prepared a contract which grants her half of his income. With Tex headlining, they start touring throughout Texas, along with two other acts, Susan Jessup, Delores Hart, and a singing trio As Deke's popularity grows, Glenda devises publicity stunts to leverage it. At one show, she pays two aged women to criticise him. When they start to argue with young fans, Glenda has a press photographer document the incident. As the tour progresses, Deke and Susan become interested in one another. After playing at small venues, the group is hired to play in a large Amarillo theatre on a 4-day run. Convinced that it's his ticket to regain fame, Tex accepts Glenda's suggestion to share the bill with Deke. After which she calls reporters of the Dallas Chronicle to write a story on Deke. Later that night, Deke is provoked at a restaurant by the boyfriend of one of his fans, who wants to hear him sing a song. After singing a tune from the jukebox, he starts a fight with him. He's later exonerated by the police. Meanwhile, a concert is cancelled by the mayor's office after they received a complaint from parents about Deke's music. Glenda arranges a studio telecast of a concert in order to gain publicity. This enables her to convince the town board to allow him to perform. Deke, unhappy, is considering leaving the entertainment business when Glenda finds out and talks him into performing. On the day of the telecast, Deke is shocked after learning that Tex had been married to and later divorced from Glenda. Disillusioned, he drives off before the show. When Glenda finds out about it from Tex, she goes after Deke, finding him after he's been run off the road by crossing cattle. Glenda confesses everything to him, getting him fired and lying about the complaint, after which she tears up the contract before convincing him to return for the broadcast. The concert is delayed. Fans are filmed by local newscasters defending Deke's music. Eventually, an upset Susan arrives to reveal that Deke will not be appearing on the show. However, Deke does appear shortly after, declaring that he has something very important to say to somebody, and starts the show by singing "Loving You." As the song ends, Susan goes on stage with him, after which they meet Tex and Glenda backstage. Deke offers to let them both manage him, as he is offered a recording contract. His hit song, Teddy Bear, from the movie, was a #1 hit during the summer of 1957, staying at #1 for 7 weeks. The third of the 4 Elvis songs that year. Teddy Bear would also hit #1 on the R&B bestsellers list, becoming his 4th #1 on that chart. The song also reached #1 on the country charts as well. Elvis's parents, Vernon and Gladys, were cast as audience members in the film. After Gladys died, Elvis never watched it again, saying it hurt too much to see his mother up there on the screen. Delores Hart was the only child of actor Bert Hicks and Harriet Hicks, who separated when she was 3. Isn't she beautiful? I think she's so gorgeous. She stated, "As a child, I was precocious. My parents married when they were 16 and 17 and were both beautiful people." Hicks was also related by marriage through an aunt to singer Maria Lanza. She lived in Chicago with her grandparents, who sent her to St. Gregory Catholic School, not for its religious education, but it was the closest to home. She stated, "My grandparents didn't want me to get run over by streetcars." It was actually her grandfather, a movie theatre projectionist, whose enthusiasm for films influenced her decision to pursue an acting career. She would watch the films, but without sound, so as not to disturb his naps in the booth. And her job was to wake him up at the end of each reel. Hicks converted to Catholicism when she was 10. By age of 11, she was living again in Beverly Hills with her mother, who was now a restaurant greeter, who married owner Al Gordon. After high school, she studied at Marymount College using the stage name of Delores Hart. In 1956, she was signed to play a supporting role as the love interest to Elvis in the 1957 release of Loving You. After this appearance, she found herself in frequent demand, and she made 2 more films before appearing with Elvis again in 1958's King Creole. She is denied ever having an intimate relationship with Elvis, on screen or off. In an interview during her movie career, she was often asked, "What is it like kissing Elvis?" She chuckled a bit at the memory. She said, "I think the limit for a screen kiss back then was something like 15 seconds. I had one that lasted 40 years. Hart then made her debut on Broadway, winning a 1959 Theatre World Award as well as a Tony Award nomination for Best Featured Actress for her role in The Pleasure of His Company. In 1960, she starred in Where the Boys Are with George Hamilton, a teenage comedy about a college student on a spring break, which developed in a near cult-like following. In the film, Hart plays a co-ed who struggles to define herself when confronted with her newly discovered sexuality and popularity with the opposite sex. It was during the filming of Come Fly With Me, that she became close friends with Carl Malden, who also starred in the picture. Malden wrote in his autobiography that when him and his wife Mona wanted to go out, Delores would spend time babysitting their kids. She adored the Maldens, and she loved their children, and quickly became like a member of the family. It was shortly after the picture that Delores got engaged, and she actually asked Malden's daughters, Mila and Carla, to be her bridesmaids. It was after they had a couple of fittings of their dresses that Delores appeared at the Maldens and announced she was calling off the wedding. A few days later, she came over with what amounted to be all her worldly possessions, jewelry, purses, knickknacks, and the like, and told the girls to take what they wanted. She said she was moving away, and she was moving because it was an affair of the heart. Her exact words. She not only left behind her fiancé, she left her acting career as well. Even though she broke off her engagement to Los Angeles architect Don Robinson, they remained close friends. She admitted she loved him. "Every love doesn't have to wind up at the altar," she said. Don never married, but he visited her every year at Christmas and at Easter at the Abbey in Connecticut until his death. Sister Delores Hart, as a novice, she told the Abbey founder, Lady Abbess Benedict Duss, "I'll never have to worry again about being an actress because it is all over and behind me." But Lady Abbess replied, "I'm sorry, but you're completely wrong. Now you have to take up a role and really work at it." Hart submitted a rejoinder. "I was so mad when she said that because I really emptied my pockets, so to speak, and literally had given away everything that had meant so much to me." The abbess said, "I'm sorry you did that, because there's a lot of things that you gave away that you're going to need in here." She initially took the religious name of Sister Judith, but she changed it to Sister Delores for her final vows. She took her final vows in 1970, and she still chants in Latin 8 times a day. Anita Marie Wood Brewer, born in 1937, also known as Little Bitty, and Little. TV performer, recording artist. Anita recalls, I met Elvis in 1957. I was on Top 10 Dance Party on WHPQ radio television in Memphis at the time. It was a popular dance show that they had every Saturday afternoon. The teenagers would come and dance, and Wink Martindale and I would introduce the songs. Elvis watched that show a lot, and one Saturday after the show, he had Lamar Fike call me on the phone and saying he wanted a date to see me that night. Well, I already had a date with Jimmy Omar, and I wouldn't break the date. Lamar went ballistic. I mean, he just could not believe why don't you break a date and go with Elvis Presley? Are you crazy? I mean, he really went wild. I said, well, I don't believe Elvis would like that if I did that to him. If I had a date with him and broke it for someone else. So I'm sorry, I can't do that because I already have plans. Lamar got really, really angry and hung up on me. And I thought, well, I'll never hear from him again. And to be honest with you, I really wasn't an Elvis fan at the time. So it happened. About a few weeks later, he called again. And the next time, I did not have a date. So I was able to go. I was living with a lady by the name of Miss Patty at the time, and she was like a surrogate mother to me. Anita continues. So this night, Lamar said, we'll be going over to pick you up around about 8ish. So I got dressed and ready when they drove up in a big Cadillac. They had this real big, long black Cadillac, and George Klein came to the door. George says, I'm here to pick up Anita. And Miss Patty says, no, I'm sorry. If Elvis wants to see her, he'll have to come to the door and pick her up himself. So he went back to the car, and Elvis got out of the car and came to the door and met Miss Patty. George introduced them to me, and we had a little conversation there in the living room. Miss Patty said, now, Elvis, you have her back at a reasonable hour. She was very protective. So after she met us, she did allow me to go with him. And we went out into the car, and I remember there was Cliff Gleaves in the back seat, and George and another man who I can't remember his name right now. And Elvis was driving. So I got in the car, sat on my side of the seat, because in those days that's what you did. And so then Elvis started, like so many dates we had, just driving around Memphis. We stopped by Crystal's Hamburgers. I didn't realise how much he liked Crystal's, but anyway, Lamar went in and bought about 3 dozen Crystal hamburgers. And they came back out to the car, and all the guys ate every one of them. I don't even like Crystal's hamburgers, but that was okay. I can't imagine that how many hamburgers they had. They just wolfed them all down. Then we continued driving around again. Then Elvis said, would you like to come out and see Graceland? He had just purchased Graceland at the time. And I said, sure, you know I'd love to. I really felt at ease because of the guys in the back seat that I knew. Not knowing Elvis, but I tell you this, he made a good impression on me because he was so good looking. This man was in the summer or spring, it was absolutely beautiful. He had a long red velvet long sleeve puppy shirt on, and I think he had worn it in a movie. He had just made Loving You when I met him, and he had this shirt on. These black trousers, and I think he had a motorcycle cap on his head. He was so handsome. I mean, I have to say, Elvis was the most handsome man I'd ever seen, before or after. I'd never seen anybody as handsome as he. He was just very, very good looking, you know. And then, as I got to meet him and know him, he had a very good personality as well. Funny, pulling pranks, laughing a lot of the time. He was a very, very good looking man. I've said it once, I'll say it again. He had my attention. So we went to Graceland, and he proceeded to show me around Graceland and gave me a pink and black teddy bear. He showed me all the rooms and introduced me to his mother and dad and to his grandma. They were all there. And we visited and listened to some music and played the piano a while. Then he said, "Come up, I want to show you my office and what's upstairs." I said, "Okay." So we went upstairs, and of course he took me to his bedroom. And it was dark, navy blue drapes, and the biggest bed I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, it was a really big bed, and mirrors all around it everywhere. And his bathroom, I remember, had baby blue carpet all over the floor, and light blue mirrors everywhere. And then the closets he showed me on both sides, and they were just filled with his clothes. He never wore the same thing twice. You know, he'd just take them off and dump them. And his office is right there next to it. Then we were talking, and Elvis began to sit me down on the bed, and he tried to kiss me. And you know, in those days, people just didn't kiss on their first date, not ever. So there was no way I was going to do that. I didn't care who he was. Then he tried to get a little fresh with me, and I said, "Oh, no, you don't. That won't work. You know, you're going to have to take me home now." So I said, "Okay." And he took me downstairs and took me home. He was a gentleman about it. He was very nice. But he did try to get fresh on the first date. But he didn't get to first base with me. It didn't work. Anita said sometimes we would go to the ice skating ring, and he would rent it out all night long. And we would buy knee pads and elbow pads for all the guys and some of the girls. Not very many participated, but some did. And they would get out there, and they'd have wars with one another and pop the wheel up, you know, as fast as they could go. Little bitty people like Billy Smith just got clobbered. But it was so much fun, and they just loved it. And we would skate all night long. He would also invite friends who were at the gate as well. He always invited his fans to go with us. Sometimes we would go to the fairgrounds. He would rent it out after hours, and would just invite anyone and everyone to come that was at his home, around his home, at the gate when he was in town, so everyone would turn up at the fairgrounds. Friends, some family, some just fans, they'd all turn up. And he would stay all night long and ride everything as many times as we wanted to. Just have a wonderful time all night long. Loving You premiered in Memphis on July 10, 1957 at the Strand Theatre. Elvis did not go to that showing, instead opting to take girlfriend Anita Wood, as well as his parents, to a private midnight screening. The film opened nationally on July 30, 1957 and peaked at number 10 on the Variety National Box Office Survey, staying on the chart for 4 weeks. Elvis dyed his hair black, following his favourite actors Tony Curtis and Rudolph Valentino. This was the second of his 1956 3-movie deal with Paramount Pictures. Elvis was paid $150,000 US. So there we go. Movie number 2 has been done. And we have Anita Wood, who is now on the scene. And we all love Anita. We all love Anita. Stay tuned next week, for we'll reveal more about Anita and Elvis. We'll get into his next movie, and we'll see what other antics he gets up to. Don't forget to like, press the subscribe button. It's free. Write your comments down the bottom. Let me know if you're liking this series or not. You all take care, and we will see you next time. Bye.